Alright, welcome back to the sequence of reports that I'm reading from North Africa. This has proven to be a very long thing. I'm recording this after I'd finished and I realized just how damn long it took. So without further ado, I shall now cut back to where I left off at the end of part 1. So, enjoy. Small arms, for those of you who like small arms, things that go pop. Carbine generally reported upon favorably. It gave poor results in the hands of 1 105mm artillery battalion of the 1st Division because men failed to keep the carbine clean and they jammed in combat. I suspect that's because they didn't think that they would need their carbine and they didn't bother to clean it. I seem to recall we had that problem in the Gulf War as well. What's that transportation company? Anyway. The battalion was rearmed with .03 rifles, i.e. the Springfields. When taken care of, carbine performed satisfactorily. What a shock. It is a replacement for the pistol, not the rifle. Stock is thin at right-sided receiver and some cracking starts here, samples being sent for examination. Now, our officers report that only 3 carbines in the hands of this particular battalion failed. Garand semi-automatic is tops. That's official reporting for you. Must be cleaned in action for assured performance. All have received and are using a special lubricant. Reported that the Germans will use any they can lay their hands on. Devise a small brush like a toothbrush, prophylactic type with tuft, for cleaning receiver and chamber. Men are writing home asking for toothbrushes so that they may have one for their rifles. I did exactly the same thing. It shows you the difference I had in wars. So the first war I went to in Iraq, I'm a platoon leader, I'm out in the field, and I write home to the wife saying, honey, I need a rifle sight. So she sent me out with this EOTech that I put onto my rifle. The second war in Afghanistan, I'm driving a desk mainly. I write, will you send me a USB keyboard? Because the little laptop thing that they gave me was painful. So I got a keyboard. But there you go, long tradition of writing home for new material. Important to add this as an accessory to be carried in the stock rear pocket. Bazooka is performing splendidly. It is used for knocking out machine gun nests, has knocked out a half dozen or more tanks. Needs a rough quadrant for high angle fire, no malfunctions. Flash hiders must be provided for all machine guns. Those provided for the 1917A1 are satisfactory. Similar or equivalent must be provided in 1919A4. Want those for caliber 50 also. Let's see if they said anything on that. They don't. M9A1 grenades are fine. Knocked out a number of armored cars and tanks at the Iran landing. Those are rifle grenades. Ammunition shakes loose on web belts when wet extraction is hard. We're talking about the web belts for the ammunition feed here. Caliber 50 heavy barrel gun was commended by everybody. Fine for AA, and all have improvised mounts of some sort, some for dual mounting. Want incendiary ammunition, but can't get requisitions filled as ammunition is marked ammunition for aircraft, and thus nobody's going to issue it for ground purposes. When sufficient stocks are available, the aircraft designation should be eliminated and issued to ground troops completed. Okay, they don't say anything on that. Issue of caliber 50 AP for aircraft is on the increase because of the greater ammunition protection being given enemy planes. I don't know enough about the flying things, I can't tell you. The BAR is excellent. Stock breakage is high, although less than in training. Spring change lever mortality is high, can't get enough of them. They should be checked and increased spares provided. Germans have a good rifle grenade fired from a launcher. The grenade is rotated by a plastic formed band at the rears of the grenade, which match with bands of the launcher. Okay, well, nothing particularly surprising there. Concur and test the grenade, but distribution of our present grenade should be expedited. So, okay, they have a good grenade, but ours will work fine. There is a demand for an intermediate weapon between a grenade and a 60mm mortar. I suspect this will become the Mark 19. Information furnished about our rifle grenade will be tried upon. Let's see if they say anything. No, they do not. Special shell for 81mm for clearing barbed wire is desired and is being developed by Colonel Nixon. It's thrown out about 225 yards with a cable attached to which is affixed grappling hooks. Cable is then winched in and drags wire with it. Well, that makes sense. Similar development should be undertaken in the United States to provide round of this type. Oh, shame that I have no idea if this ever happened. Now, the idea of firing grappling hooks to drag back the barbed wire isn't new, but I thought those things would be fired like rifle grenades, not out of a mortar. It could be a weight issue, perhaps. Maybe to get that 225 yards, you actually need the power of a mortar. No complaint about the size of our mine. Those questioned think it's satisfactory. When necessary, 2 mines can be used in conjunction. AGF says there are numerous complaints about about the size of our mine, and many of the officers say that they are unfit. If 1 mine can be developed to do the work of 2 mines, then why use 2 mines? Makes sense. The general opinion of the officers with whom this section is contacted is that the German mine is better than the US mine. This should be seriously considered and action taken to correct defects in our mine. German and Italian mines are not liked, very sensitive and tricky. Detonation in 1 mine often initiated by the use of TNT cord between mines so that the first mine will be under the vehicle when the second mine is fired. And we see these in Iraq as well. You'll have the detonator in one place with an offset to the mine that is under the soft underbelly of the vehicle. Particularly, you'll find them on roads. Mines which have been fired over or subjected to blows are not safe to handle and should be destroyed in place. The detection and removal or destruction of mines and booby traps are worrying everybody. All troops should be trained in mine detection and avoidance. No certain way of handling this has as yet been worked out. North Africa will try machine guns mounted on tank for clearing minefields. And it's true that the Americans never really came up with a satisfactory way of dealing with mines. And there were requests again. We don't know if you can do this or not. Send up the request. We want a device that will detect a mine sufficiently far in front of a tank that at 50 miles an hour I can still stop. Yeah, good luck. With reference to the subject of enemy mines, familiarity breeds contempt. By making all of our combat troops familiar with them by training, a lot of worry will be avoided. Familiarity breeds contempt. Should be... Oh, that's okay. That's what it is. Okay. That makes sense, actually. But I would still be very worried by mines because they're kind of nasty little buggers. With regards to shooting at tanks, at mines with tank machine guns, this should be thoroughly investigated before adoption. Aircraft armament, including bombs, is good. The United Kingdom advises that the most important need is for bombs to destroy submarine pens. Higher percentage of AP ammunition is required, we saw that. A small bomb similar to the German butterfly bomb for dropping in large quantities is desired for immunizing airfields until the bombs are removed. Butterfly bomb is very annoying and dangerous, and this actually comes up a couple of times. I don't know if the Americans ever developed butterfly bombs. Long delay fuses not received in North Africa. This is interesting. United Kingdom wants a bomb about 5 pounds or maybe somewhat larger for bombing aircraft in flight. Lacking a better fuse, provide it with an impact fuse. A time fuse is no good. Contemplated special fuse is satisfactory. I suspect the special fuse in this case is VT, the little radar proximity fuse. But at least impact type is wanted if the development of the other will be delayed. It's a very interesting concept. Send you a bomber or whatever above the enemy bomber to drop bombs on the bomber. Now, in fairness, there have been articles that you see where there's a lot of reference to naval warfare, for example. So I've seen German documentation for tank destroyers talking about torpedo boats and so on. So this thing reminds me a lot of the Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar. Fire a salvo, big warhead, contact fuse. United Kingdom wants parachute fragmentation bomb reinstated. Okay, so I haven't bothered reading this thing about the heater for inside receiver of caliber 50 gun has been worked out in the UK. Will send sample and UK desires investigation and test for possible adoption where warming of the gun by hot air ducts is not sufficient for purpose. Yeah, this is the first time I've read this section of the pages here. New objective for 37mm gun P39 installation is fired 57 rounds in one setup. Okay. No trouble with 20mm guns or ammo. Automotive equipment, generally excellent, performing well. The 3/4 ton Dodge differential carrier is weak and is universally giving trouble. This is section 13. Spider gears. Okay, don't care. Suspension spring breaks on half tracks with a 75mm gun. A 1 1/4 inch filler piece is being placed to increase compression of spring curves to cure the trouble. Can also be cured by a longer spring. Convoy light on British vehicles should be adopted. This light, which is a bullseye, shines on the back of the differential housing. The housing is painted white with a black number for vehicle identification. The light is shielded from above. Okay. Bakelite switches in tanks of high mortality, i.e. they break a lot. Detergent or front plate on the half track should be strengthened if at all possible to stop 20mm German ammunition at 500 yards. Ring mount for truck means improvement. They start talking about maintenance equipment, maintenance trucks. Blackout canvas workshops are needed. Talk about how many vents you have. Air compressors, heavy wrecker is overloaded. Combat jacket is far superior to field jacket and should be adopted in preference to field jacket for ordnance troops. I guess ordnance troops were not considered worthy of combat jackets. Maintenance organizations are good as constituted. Second Corps of the combat troops never had to look to the rear for maintenance because service was pushed up to them by the Corps. That's actually underlined in the report. Bit on radios, evacuation unit. Okay, I think we're about done with this. Oh, captured enemy material. Never mind. It is essential that technically trained ordnance personnel be provided each theater. It is being done to handle the collection, shipment, and dissemination of information on captured enemy material. Information obtained in Technical Intelligence Summary War Office. M110 is excellent. Good to know. Organize at Aberdeen Proving Ground 2 or 3 demonstration teams. Send these around as required. Okay. Of the captured enemy material inspected, the following are important. So this is G. Do we have a G here? Okay. The German 75mm AT gun and the German-Russian 76mm AT gun. Particularly the German one have interesting points. They have high power, are light, and have low silhouette. The torsion bar suspension in the German carriage bears investigation. It permits the carriage to be slung low with respect to the axle and yet provides good springing. The latter is essential in their design, which uses rubber tires. Okay, so you can get away with lesser springing if you have pneumatic tires like the Americans. The German coned projectile for the 75mm AT gun and their tank guns have a nose fuse and its performance is reported as excellent. We should try this round and apply its features. The German Mark 6 tank is formidable with its 88 and heavy armor. It was reported to never operate alone but in conjunction with the Mark 4 Mark 3 tanks. The greater range of the 88 may have enabled the Germans to knock out some of our tanks at greater ranges that we could employ to knock them out. It was noted that the outside bogies of the Mark 6 tank were removable, with presumably for shipment, and by doing this and removing the tracks, the width of the tank could be brought down to a more practicable shipping width. The word practicable does not get used anywhere near as much as it should, I don't think. German tanks are all equipped with 3 smoke pots, so that they covered this before. A very desirable feature. Talking about the cartridge cases were steel with a brass wash. Germans and Russians employ muzzle brakes almost exclusively. Investigation should be continued. Okay. German butterfly bomb is a potent weapon for immunizing an airfield until the bombs have been removed. They are extremely dangerous to remove. There may be 3 types, but at least 2 have been reported as used. Basically, some have immediate detonation and some are anti-handling. Oh, here we are. The Germans have an 88 self-propelled mount, and pictures of this were taken from a captured German prisoner in North Africa. Prints brought to the US. This weapon will provide them with a long-range self-propelled anti-tank weapon to supplement other means for the attack of tanks. This should be given consideration in further determination for the need of such a weapon by our ground forces. The 90mm in the M10 mount is available for such an application when desired. This is May of 43. I'm not... May 43? Ouch. I always have the important ones handy. Okay, yeah, September 42. Investigations indicated it would be possible to place a 90mm into tanks and gun motor carriage. Current use. After a demonstration firing at Aberdeen of a 90mm gun in an M10 in December 42, the idea was validated. T-71 was designated March 1943. Go figure. Again, in March 1943, nobody wanted the bloody thing, but evidently he's right, it existed. Okay. The stowage of ammunition in German tanks is no better than ours, and I saw no armor plate or other protection for it. The Germans use no basket and acquire more room through its emission. I am convinced that the baskets should be eliminated from our tanks, as we are doing in more recent designs and arrangements. This is true. Baskets did start to go away from US tanks for a while. The 76 kind of went, there were some with a full basket, some with a half basket, and there's a few with no basket. Then of course you get the Pershing where there's no basket at all, but that was kind of, they didn't have a choice in the matter, because it was the only way that they could get the required 70 rounds of ammunition. The earlier T-25, T-26 only carried 40 something, which was inadequate. The general arrangement in the German Mark IV tank, which is the only intact type of tank I was able to find to get into, is no better than ours. In fact, I noted less headroom for the driver and assistant driver with their hatches somewhat to one side overhead, which is true. The Germans are adding armor caps over their air intake hatches, which latch down in place with gaps for air passage. This provides protection from machine gun fire from the air, from fragments and high-angle missiles. It actually says missiles, spelled M-I-S-S-E-L-S. I only saw spaced armor on the front of the turret, and in places the space was filled with sandbags. The Germans also carry extra pieces of track over the forward part of the tank chassis. This provides some additional protection. As covered under small arms, the German rifle grenade launcher should be carefully studied. General, okay, that seems particularly interesting. Waterproofing kits for all equipment in addition to automotive must be developed for surf landing. There is a lack of complete information on waterproofing kits. It is of greatest importance that instructors on operation and maintenance of new equipment precede the arrival of the equipment in theater. Okay, I can see that. Because what's going to happen, you get a new piece of equipment, you don't get an instructor, you're going to play around with it to try to figure out what makes it work. Also imperative that spare parts and tools arrive. There's a distinct lack of up-to-date information on the development of new items of ordnance, due particularly to the reluctance on our part to be sending such information to a combat area. It is a distinct omission and should be corrected. OCM Action's monthly reports on R&D should be sent to the Ordnance Officer of the theatre. They should include pictures and characteristics of items under test and approaching standardization. Rotation of personnel, I don't think we care about. Let's say 18 months seems to be suitable. It is sincerely recommended that more visits of the type I've been permitted to take to North Africa and the UK be encouraged. This would include similar visits to the United States from personnel from theatres, and I have encountered such things in the archives. Promotions. The promotion of, frankly, the question of promotions of senior personnel of the Ordnance Department in the theatres should be looked into. I saw in North Africa a lieutenant colonel in command of the coordinates group and doing an outstanding job with colonels of other services in parallel echelons. I saw no stars on ordnance shoulders on ordnance jobs until General Sailor was promoted in London. There are none in North Africa. Travel by air. It is only proper that note be included of the courtesies and facilities provided by the Air Transport Command. The services furnished are remarkable, and I encountered only the utmost desire to aid in making travel comfortable and expeditious. The officers and men were always willing and anxious to provide whatever was in their power to offer. I am astounded by the expanse of this undertaking. It obviously has great potential value. William A. Borden, Colonel, Ordnance Department, Deputy Chief, Technical Division. Alright, so I'm going to get out of that section. I've done that, so 2 more to go. June 1943 we are now. Report on anti-tank and anti-aircraft requirements in North Africa. The following report is rendered in compliance with verbal instructions from Commanding General Army Ground Forces. I'm not quite sure who actually wrote this. Let's see if I may not have photographed the signature page. Anti-tank. Troops lost all confidence in the 37mm anti-tank gun due to lack of high-velocity ammunition initially and to the ineffectiveness of the weapon at ranges of 1,000 yards and over. Test firing conducted in that theatre using high-velocity ammunition proved the weapon effective against most tanks at 300 to 500 yards, but did not restore the confidence of the troops. This must be reinstilled in new units training in the US. 2 types of weapon are desired by the infantry, one for battalion anti-tank units and one for the regimental anti-tank company. Killing range, weight, maneuverability, and weight of ammunition must be considered. The battalion should be light. The battalion weapons should be as light and maneuverable as possible, but capable of stopping tanks at 300 yards. The regimental weapon should be capable of stopping tanks at 1,000 yards and may be heavier, larger, and less maneuverable. The following weapons are recommended. The present 37mm anti-tank gun with a 4,000 feet per second muzzle velocity and free traverse, or the present 57mm tube and cradle mounted on the 37mm carriage. Equipped with muzzle brake, should not exceed 1,500 pounds of weight. Now, of course, what eventually happened is battalions, actually they get the 57, didn't they? Regimental 57mm anti-tank gun, or the 3-inch or 76. Anti-aircraft, 50 caliber seems to be adequate organic. Tank destroyers. Opinions on this subject vary widely. The majority favors towed guns for this purpose, which may be due in part to prejudices against present equipment. 75mm guns and howitzers and half tracks, and the 3-inch gun M10. Now, again, I may come to this, but opinions on the M10 vary hugely. So again, talking with Harry ID yesterday, says M10 users loved their vehicles. And indeed, one unit flat refused to move to the M10, from the M10 to the M18. Yet there are other pieces of documentation that say, there's one line, I may come to it, those that have used the M10 hate it, and those that don't use it love it. Properly employed, I believe self-propelled weapons, low in silhouette, highly maneuverable and faster than tanks, should prove more effective than towed weapons. A smart man. Oh, this is Colonel Brian Evans, Field Artillery. A weapon of the T-70 type seems satisfactory. All tank and tank destroyer weapons of 75mm and larger should be equipped for indirect laying. Tank destroyer battalions should be attached to supplement organic divisional anti-tank weapons. Control should be vested in the divisional RD commander. A bit about signal lamps, 1 of 5 Howitzer. Don't need that's very technical things that broke. Shields not desired, okay. 1 of 5 Howitzer 155 Howitzer M1918. This weapon is wearing out due to its advanced age. I can see that. .155 M1. This is the only weapon in theater not outranged by German artillery. It is most effectively used. It was used most effectively for counter-battery, harassing, and interdiction missions. Over 50% of the firing was fired with supercharge in excess of 20,000 yards. Just trying to see if there's anything of interest. I mean, there is a lot in this, and it's interesting the amount of data that comes in. White phosphorus shells should be continued in production at its value for incendiary effect and its usefulness against tanks. The effect of timed fire is both terrifying and devastating. All prisoners commented on this very effective type of firing. Due to the long ranges fired and to the advanced position of forward observers, a longer burning time for this type of fuse is desired. A minimum of 45 seconds should be provided. Basically, they're talking about airburst. Back to the 155. 105mm M1. Most firing was fired with supercharge. Again, the large ranges in North Africa seems to be a common theme when talking about artillery. Tank destroyer. There's been both favorable and unfavorable comment upon the tank destroyer weapon consisting of the 75 on the half track. This was a survey. So this was a survey that was sent out. This is the question. What is the thought of the using troops regarding this equipment? The gun itself is satisfactory, but it's extremely limited in traverse. The vehicle lacks mobility, is too distinctive in shape. The silhouette is too high, too open and exposed to air attack. Maintenance difficult due to the failure of parts unsuspected of weakness for which no replacements are available. I suspect that's the springs that was talked about earlier. The number 3 cannoneer has a choice of 2 options, 2 positions, each equally unsatisfactory, either on the poop deck, exposed to hostile fire, or down in the well, where he must dodge the recoil. Really, they call it the poop deck. A mount with lower silhouette, more maneuverability, more easily dug in or concealed is desired. The ideal shall consist of an engine, a pair of tracks, a platform, and a gun. Has the 3-inch gun motor carriage M10 been used in combat? If so, what is their concern? What comment is there? In general, here it is. In general, those who have not fought this weapon want it. Those who have don't want it. It is believed that the weapon was tactically incorrectly employed. It's not a great scan. At El Qatar, it was sent out to chase tanks. 7 out of 12 were lost in 5 minutes' time. It is too large and too high for easy concealment or digging in for ambush. The sight is not commensurate with the capabilities of the gun. Considerable trouble has been experienced with broken traverse gear housing. You should be General Patton recommended that we stop building these weapons, that these now in existence be equipped with more front armor, a top for the turret, issued as tanks, and then gotten rid of. Considerable difference of opinion exists regarding the proper weapon for tank destroyer use. The majority of tank destroyer officers who have been in combat consider the role of the tank destroyer to be a defensive one. If this hypothesis is correct, a towed gun should be the primary weapon of tank destroyer units, augmented by self-propelled weapons or anti-tank units in core army troops. On the other hand, anti-tank defense of the infantry division, which now consists of towed guns, must be reinforced by powerful, highly mobile weapons for flexibility. This requirement indicates a self-propelled weapon. Recommend that tank destroyer units be equipped with high-velocity, self-propelled 3-inch with 76mm guns of low silhouette to permit easy concealment and digging in. Scrolling down, so I'm just trying to see some other comments here. That page you don't care about. Oh, conference from General Patton, commanding 2nd Corps. Basic discipline is lacking. Failure to salute is a lack of alertness. Close order drill is required to instill confidence in an officer in himself and in the enlisted men and the officers. Basically, make sure you have the voice of command. Precision, unquestioned obedience, and responsibility must be stressed. Training in night fighting is necessary. Now, in 1940, when they were invading France, the Germans didn't like to fight at night. A minimum of 2 nights per week should be utilized in marching, teaching, approach march, the attack, and occupation of a position. Physical fitness is an essential. Officers should be able to run a mile in 10 minutes with all equipment. They must be enthusiastic fighters. They must carry absolute minimum equipment, a pistol, no carbine, or Tommy gun. That actually probably says something. You must be able to run a mile in 10 minutes in all equipment. Now, I've done that. And I can't say I've found it particularly difficult. However, I am, bred with 20th century nutrition and so on. So that probably tells you something about the level of capability in World War II. Men carry too much clothing. We want killers, not laundry men. Well, here's General Patton for you. Let them carry clothes on their back without barracks bags, trunk lockers, etc. Extra clothing should be carried in quartermaster trucks. Give candy, but not in the ration. Our soldiers are the filthiest, sloppiest in the country due to the texture and shade of the field jacket material. Men looking like tramps have no pride in themselves, nor can they fight. Overseas service should be considered a promotion. Roughnecks and football players, not stenographers and clerks, should be sent to fight. Officers must wear the insignia of their ranks on their helmet. Enlisted men should wear nothing. Hence, any mark on a helmet indicates an officer. I am sure German snipers love that one. Self-propelled tank destroyer weapons are not needed in the armored division. 2-towed 3-inch or 57mm anti-tank guns per tank company should suffice. Put turrets on the top of M10s, issue them as tanks. Never place a cannon where it can be seen beyond its lethal range. The best anti-aircraft weapon yet issued is a 37 with twin caliber 50. Need more mine detectors. We need a plastic landmine containing no metal. Need a better boot. A boot at least 12 inches high with rawhide laces should replace the field shoe and canvas leggings. Buttons should replace zippers. Sweatbands and helmet liners should be removable for washing. Infantry division needs a recon battalion. The bottom of trousers should be reduced to about 17 inches. There is no necessity for changing the armor division at this time. Major General Irwin. We need more range in division artillery. 4.5-inch guns will avoid wasting the 155 gun on minor missions that now only they can reach. We must have anti-tank protection in the divisional artillery. Without such protection, tactical use of weapons is interfered with. One attached battalion of 75mm guns on half-tracks will probably suffice for divisional artillery. So it makes you wonder if the Germans were using their armoured cars or something like that in long-range raids. I'm sure the Italians probably, with their armoured cars, were doing a similar job. Mounted binoculars per battery. Need at least 12. Keep the 608 radio set. The carbine does not work when dirty. One battery was overrun and carbines failed to function. Well, I'm sorry, that's not a complaint. Major General Allen, commanding 1st Infantry. Divardi needs more officers. We need a larger divisional reconnaissance unit. Several recon companies of armored jeeps with scout car command vehicles in each platoon should be satisfactory. A platoon of self-propelled 75 guns equipped for indirect fire. Yeah, right. We don't need a separate anti-tank unit. Interesting. Division needs a quartermaster battalion. Division engineers must consider themselves combat troops and not construction troops. Never attach infantry to armored units. Make the attachment the opposite direction. 75, okay, so this is 1st Armored Division. Colonel Lambert. 75mm gun in the M4 tank should have its muzzle velocity souped up and reticles graduated to include 5,000 yards. The engraving should be as fine as possible so as not to obscure the target. All tank guns 75 and up should be equipped for indirect laying. We like the M4A2 tanks better than the M4s. The diesel engines handle better and are less of a fire hazard. AT ammunition. The new AT-HE ammunition disintegrates Mark IV tanks at close range. We haven't had any long range things to shoot at. Each tank company should have 4 57 or 3-inch towed guns for anti-tank work. Armoured limbers or caissons like those towed by the M7s should be issued to carry their ammunition. Each gun should have a crew of 6 and a chief of section. Ammunition supplied 50% HE, 40% AP, 10% white phosphorus. Now, I have not seen any documentation explaining the thinking behind this. The tank battalion needs 105 howitzers instead of 75s and half tracks. One platoon of 3 per battalion is enough, and that's what eventually ended up happening. You have the 105mm Sherman becomes the assault gun. The 105 on a light tank chassis should be better than the M7. Our 81 mortar platoon needs more range. We need an armored car with multi-wheel type. Should be able to carry at least 3 men and a driver. I suspect that will be met by the M8 armored car. Some sort of command vehicle is needed. It should look like other vehicles with room for 5 men. The M2 compass is satisfactory. It needs to be luminous. The Cub airplanes were used for route reconnaissance, message service and surveillance and are very valuable. They were not used for adjustment of fire due to hostile air activity and the availability of excellent ground observation posts. A small cooking outfit should be issued each tank. Now, remember I interviewed Tom Sader. He said the best piece of equipment that he was able to steal off the Germans was their little stove. A combat command needs about 50 miles of W110 wire, a 12-drop switchboard. Command tank should be mounted with radio sets for a certain type. 24-hour march means 72 hours of maintenance work. Provide tank trailers like the British. Division engineer battalion should have 4 companies. Okay, don't care. Okay, I think we're getting closer to the end here. So this is also June 43. Questions by the Chief of Ground Requirements Section AGF. The following replies to specific questions are submitted. What is the thought regarding the use of self-propelled artillery for tank destroyers? The British believe self-propelled artillery to be suitable for armoured use only, armoured units only. Divisional anti-tank weapons should be towed guns. The divisional anti-tank defence should be supplemented by larger caliber, harder hitting, highly manoeuvrable weapons assigned to tank destroyer units. For speed of emplacement and displacement, these should be self-propelled. The British state they can put a towed gun into action as fast as a self-propelled gun, but that the self-propelled gun can displace more rapidly. Is this statement correct? In general, correct. The value of the self-propelled gun lies in the fact that it can move more rapidly. What anti-tank or tank destroyer weapons should the armoured divisions have in addition to the normal artillery? The armoured divisions prefer towed 57 or 3-inch guns for this purpose. 2 to 4 of these guns per tank company are desired. Again, no explanation as to why. Is there a need for an armoured car? Yes, the requirement does exist. Is the use of 8-inch and 240mm howitzers contemplated in the North African theatre now being studied? Which type of weapon is desired by battalion commanders for anti-tank use? High or low muzzle velocity, 75 or 3-inch caliber. High velocity weapons are universally desired. Why would you pick a low velocity? Neither 75 nor 3-inch guns are desired in a battalion due to size and weight of both pieces of ammunition. The present 37mm gun with increased muzzle velocity or 57 tube is desired. How is a 25-pounder anti-tank gun performing? None are in service and none will be produced. Colonel Robinson in the British 8th Army is saying this: the 25-pounder is the the 17-pounder is the pet anti-tank weapon of the British and is a superior gun. So the 25-pounder anti-tank gun that they're talking about, 2,000 foot per second muzzle velocity, supposedly 73 millimeters of armor at 1,000 yards, 20 degrees. Have we enough artillery in the right caliber? Not enough artillery. The artillery available is outranged by the enemy artillery. The long-range character of the Tunisian campaign resulted in demands for increased range in our artillery. Okay, let's see anything else interesting here. Is field artillery receiving the benefit of Air Corps reconnaissance and photography? Only indirectly. Air reconnaissance information is furnished. You guys are probably broken off. Come back for this for part 2. It's going to be a long one. Diesel engines, a hindrance or an asset in theatre. Diesel engines are installed in the remaining TD-18 tractors, the 36 field artillery, and the 72 M10s. These engines are considered satisfactory and preferred to gasoline engines by the tank destroyer units. M4A2 tanks with diesel engines arriving in theatre are preferred to M4 tanks due to the reduced fire hazard, fuel economy, increased speed given the vehicle, and easier handling. No recurring mechanical difficulties are reported, the average engine life being about 250 hours without overhaul. Some means of reducing smoking of the diesel should be devised. No difficulty in fuel supply has been encountered, as already various oils, lubricants, and grades of gasoline must be supplied. Command post tents required, yes. Armored force, say, have any courier liaison aircraft been used? The planes were little used in the GAFSA area for adjustment to fire. General Patton considers them of doubtful value, stating our own troops fired at them and plenty of good observation posts were available. Personnel of 1st Armored Division considered the airplanes extremely valuable. What evidence is there to prove the Armored Divisions require anti-aircraft protection in addition? They're getting lots more 50 cal, 30 cal guns are worthless. If you put a 40mm instead of the 37, that should be useful. Our vehicles burn too easily. Additional protection for fuel and ammunition is required. No, that doesn't say more or less than anything else. It's just more than they would like. Lack of power in direct optic telescopic sights. Basically, they're shooting at ranges longer. This is completely different, of course, to what will happen in Europe. Is there any requirement for any additional weapons or items of equipment? A more effective recovery vehicle, trailers like the British to save on track mileage. Oh, here you go. A vehicular mine detector and destroyer to avoid striking landmines. This detector should be able to detect mines far enough ahead of the vehicle moving at 50 miles an hour to give time to stop the vehicle before it strikes the mine. Smoke projector on the tank with colored smoke for marking. Okay, here you go. 2 57mm or 3-inch anti-tank guns towed by tanks of each tank company. These are to be peeled off and placed in position to cover tank attacks or withdrawals. If you're withdrawing your tanks and your covering fire is being provided by the same anti-tank guns that your tanks just towed into position, do you just abandon the anti-tank guns? The idea requires further thought. Okay, and finally, no date is given for this, but I suspect it's a little bit late. There is a need for a hot liquid container. A hot food container model 1942 is not satisfactory for coffee. Well, there you go. That's what your wars run on. Most of the time we follow Benning's teaching on supply, gas and clothing go up with the rations. The gasoline can should be a different type of can from the water can. I wonder how they figure that one out. Here's a good one. There are many duds amongst the German shells. One that landed nearby contained a note from a French war worker to the effect that he was being forced to work and this was the best help that he could give. Colonel Greer vouches for this story. The half-track is not suitable as a command. This is from the 899th TD Battalion. The half-track is not suitable as a command vehicle. It's too conspicuous, should be replaced by an M5 Light. The anti-aircraft section should be eliminated. It cuts down the mobility of the company. We use ours to haul gas and rations. Each TD can provide its own anti-aircraft protection, i.e. the 50 cal. Remember, tank destroyer units, when they were originally created, actually had a specific tank destroyer section. Which is kind of rare because most units didn't have that. 3/4 ton weapons carrier should be replaced by an M3 with a trailer. Motorcycles should be replaced with jeeps. The M10 is a great weapon. I lost two due to improper employment. The tank destroyer role is defensive. The armor of the M10 is sufficient. The M10 needs better protection against hostile infantry. Requests a 30 caliber sponson machine gun. The following ammunition should be carried on the M10. 37 rounds AP, 38 rounds HE, and 8 smoke. Note, the battalion commander did not agree with the M5 Light as a command vehicle. He recommended the same organization as a tank platoon, that is 5 M10s, one of which being the command destroyer. Remember, gun platoons for the tank destroyers were 4 guns to the platoon. At least at the time. They may have changed it later. They're wearing out motors, keeping them running to charge the battery for radio use. Hold the parking brake down. Okay, the exhaust of the M10 picks up dust. The interphone system of the M10 is useless. Commander needs a higher power spotting scope. There should be a 2-speed turret on the M10. Armor on the track cover shirt, I think that means skirt, should be thicker. Reticle should be graduated to 5,000. Tell the troops in the States to pay more attention to what is being taught them. Every member in the crew must be a specialist. The amphibious jeep is worthless. I don't know if that means because it sinks a lot or because they just didn't have any call to use it in North Africa. Anti-tank mines are needed in large numbers. The German mine is far superior. Having several types of fuel does not unnecessarily complicate the supply. The rear sight of the M1 rifle is still being lost. I don't know. I do want to get a Garand at some point, but it'll be a while. Half-track is standing up satisfactorily. Everything burns regardless of the motor. If the first shot does not set a fire, the others will. Hostile tanks are the same. Once a tank is hit with large caliber, it is gone. Well, that is a quote that you really ought to see a little bit more of. Light tank is not wanted. By the way, I don't think this is I think this is a different unit. I don't think this is the, hang on, this is a lieutenant out of ordnance. Okay. We've measured the holes in a number of tanks. They were all hit by 75 or 5 centimeter high velocity shells. Rear axles of the 3/4 and 1.5 ton engineer truck are not holding up. The M4A1 tank has no outstanding defect. They are not using the gyro stabilizer as it has all been long range fighting. Grousers are not being used. They should not be shipped overseas. Now those would be the attachments that you put on the outside of the tank of the track to give additional grip. You don't ever see them on the M10. You almost never see, or on the M3 lights. You won't usually see them often on an M4 anywhere. And that is it. A whole bunch of reports from North Africa. Believe it or not, it is not everything I have. There is a number of surveys that I haven't spent time going through. I have no idea how long I've been doing this. When I started, I did not expect it to take more than maybe 20 minutes. Obviously, I completely and utterly misjudged. That's what I get for having a lack of advanced planning. But on the plus side, it means I was able to not lose most of my week of evenings, which I usually do for these things, and get this out. So hopefully the battery is still going. The red light is still on for this. I have no idea what the camera is saying. So there you go. I hope you found it interesting and informative, piece of information that you probably don't come across very often. And well, I will see you on the next one. So till then, feel free please to subscribe. Help me out financially on Subscribestar, Patreon, or direct PayPal, or to buy the merchandise. If you can put any money out there, get a lovely mug. Either Drive Me Closer, The Tank Is On Fire, and so on. I am looking at t-shirts again in a month or two. We'll have a look at those. But anyway, right. So have a good morning, good evening, whatever time it is where you're at. I'll see you then.